Cool. Hello and welcome to Do the Right Thing, your weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Alexandra.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I were aspiring writers with one simple and very common problem. We never actually took the time to sit down and write.
So to solve this issue, we are issuing a challenge. Each week we sit down and write a complete short story using 3 or 4 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read a story, we talk about what we learned in reading it, and then we talk about the rest of the stories sent in by you wonderful listeners.
Exacto mundo. We're simply here to help you do the right thing.
A Doof Media Production. Fantastic. Jarvis, what were the words and who are we reading?
Yeah, so the words for this week were copy, countryside, wheat, and fun. And the story we are going to be reading and talking about this week is by Corona Pollentia with Choose Your Own.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a long story, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I'll just get into it. So this is Choose Your Own by Corona Pollentia. I open my eyes, post-smoothing haze rippling across my vision and kicking up sparks on my imaginary retinas. I'm somewhere new. Blue, a sky like a flat-screen test channel hammering against me. I can feel the soft squish of loam on my bare shoulders, the scratch of little rocks and stubbly weeds down my back and across my thighs, calves, toes. Good. Everything intact. I shift my head fractionally and take in the stalks of wheat. She'll be here too. I stay quiet. I roll myself to my knees and scurry low beneath the eye line. There's no telling what she's already found if she recovered faster. I don't know this countryside, but then neither should she. It's a random seed. Subjective 3 months ago, the night city was cold and pounding with rain. I had on a shitty dollar store raincoat, the kind that's barely more than a sheet of plastic with some holes in the zipper, but the puddles and the spray kicked up under the bottom edge of it, so I was damp everywhere and soaked from toes to ribcage. Some rich shithead from the Vice had bought out my lease, and nowhere was renting. Not in my price range, anyway. I was walking until I found something better to do. I had the savings in my shoe, and I could feel the chip pressing into my foot with every step. Use me, it demanded. That's when I saw the indent place. I'd avoided them for 19 years and had been absolute fucking hell. Most parents in the North End would scrounge their way to get their kid one as soon as they were old enough not to go irredeemably crazy from it. Kids came out of them different. Scary, fast, clever, eyes quick, and haunted. They could grind out a task for hours, huck together answers from scraps, move like they were hunting something or being hunted. Nobody remembered what happened in there with a cocktail of memory drugs they sank into you. Corpse loved them. Excellent workers. They'd snapped up Amanda 3 days after hers. The indent made you palatable, even rats like me. The countryside. I'm naked and crawling beneath the wheat, ears as sharp as I can make them, eyes flickering through the bases of the stalks and the dirt. I still don't dare stand up to get a look at the landscape. There's been a theme this past week. Things hidden, pieces scattered, DIY weaponry. Light flashes off a long, tapering bit of metal, half buried in the ground, and I crawl over, yank it free, hold it in my teeth. I keep crawling. This isn't the advantage I need, but it'll help. I keep going, following the outline of the field until it comes to a muddy ditch, free across a narrow band of open ground. I hold myself there in the loam, wary. She could be waiting, looking down the line. She could have something more lethal than a foot-long spar of titanium. A minute passes. I listen carefully. Nothing. Fuck it. I scramble forward, head whipping left and right, staring down the empty for any clue. I nearly scream when I see the whitewashed house out of the corner of my eye, so close I feel stupid for not looking earlier. And then I'm rolling into the ditch with as much grace as I can, trying not to stab myself. The house. Places like that are full of the good stuff. I almost died a week ago when I stayed back too long. It had been a cabin in a frozen forest then. She got in there after me, but went right in when I hesitated. I'd come too close to bleeding out when she shot me with the crossbow she found there. I run hunched over, shiv in hand, fingers finding the places to grip, edge biting my palm without cutting. Better for gouging than stabbing or slicing, I figure. The ditch approaches the house by 15 feet or so, and when I get there, I launch myself up the side, head swaying back and forth. Nothing. Just the house. It's a 2-story farmhouse, siding worn by wind and dust. The roof badly needs shingles. Sanctuary, or maybe a death trap. I can't afford to stay out. I wrench open the door and lunge in, weapon already sweeping out toward the place I'd be if I were lying in wait. It's dark and dusty in the entryway. My hand sweeps through empty air and I pivot smoothly, shutting the door behind me with a gentle click. Nobody here, just some old benches. I creep through the house and am relieved to find it empty. The dining room has a single chair by a single large table, both with legs notched with knife marks. The kitchen's cupboards are all empty, a dark spot on the wall where a fridge once kept the pink wallpaper from bleaching in the light. I find the prize in the attic. A long knife, almost a sword, blade carbon black and rubbery grip, jammed 4 inches into a rafter so the light through the window silhouettes it. This is what I'll kill her with. I can wait here. I go back downstairs and set myself up in the front hall. I swung for the spot when I came in, but that doesn't mean it's a bad spot. She probably doesn't think like I do. Or at least, not exactly like I do. We've all got similarities. Fewer now than ever before. I suppose that's the point of this fucking thing. I think I've been crouching there for 20 minutes when I hear the scream and the splash. It's a bright, high yelp and a slap of flesh on water. I visited a pool once as a kid. Mom saved up and we went in together wearing our sturdiest underwear. Nobody there would come near me, but they couldn't kick us out. It was still one of the best days of my life. They had diving boards and tiers, great white arcs reaching up to leap from, and I went for the tallest one right away. I stood up there, the huge blue rectangle of the pool spread beneath me, the rich kids in their brightly colored swimsuits splashing around or lounging under heat lamps looking the size of crumbs. I had taken it all in, all that little world down there, and then I ran, and I jumped. There was a moment, before I fell, where I floated. Free fall. Forces canceled out, nothing but air and light around me, and then down. Splash. I remember the sound so clearly. I find my copy floating in the irrigation pond behind the house, naked as I am, face up in the pool. Her eyes are closed. Her hair floats around her, catching the light around her head. She must be dead. But I'm still here, so she isn't. It must be a trap. I creep forward, duck down, slip into the wheat, and prepare to wait. My hands tremble on the grip of my knife. What the fuck is she doing? She lies there for 5 minutes more. I feel myself shaking harder, stress building and nothing to do with it. This is wrong. Something is wrong. I scan the surroundings. There's a big packed earth berm against the pond, and I can see the muddy footprint at the top. That must be where she jumped in from. There are short reeds in the mud around the vast rectangular footprint of the muddy pool, but they don't seem disturbed. All of a sudden, she shifts. I snap my eyes to her, heart speeding to a rattle, fingers burning with a spasm of adrenaline. She's just treading water now, clumsily. Just her face is visible above the surface now, coated with strands of hair. She moves slowly toward my hiding place, and I prepare to fight, but she's just finding footing in the mud. She takes a deep breath, then disappears beneath the surface. When she comes back up, her hair has been arranged back out of her face. Only then does she look around, and she speaks. "Sam?" asks my copy, in my voice, in my inflection. The shock slams through my system again. I'm not surprised at the voice, but she wants to talk. That hasn't happened in weeks. We all understand the stakes now. I'm silent. "Please, Sam," she says. "I know you're there. I want a truce. I can offer you terms. I'm in the water. I can't hurt you." I stay silent. "Please," she says. I know that note of desperation. Fuck. I stay down. I stay hidden. She just keeps looking around. I open my mouth. Nothing comes out. I try again. "What the hell do you want?" I snarl. Deliberately, she turns away from my hiding spot, avoiding pinpointing me. "I'm really tired. Please. You must be too, right? I'll let you win this one. I just want to talk to someone, even if it's all in my head." "Why? Why would you do that? You know you're not getting out alive, right? I'm gonna have to kill you." "We're all the same person," my copy says from the water. "None of us die." "That's not..." My hand clenches. "That's not fucking true. Only one of us gets to be her, gets to be me. You know how that works." The indent. They put you into a comfortable chair and slide you backwards into the machine. You get things out of it. Skills, ruthlessness, less distraction from empathy. Amanda had had a head start climbing the corporate ladder. I cornered her into one conversation once she'd been indented. She had answered in monosyllables. Her eyes had darted around. She didn't remember anything she'd said. You can't upload a human consciousness, not exactly. You need a connection to the brain, to the patterns there. But you can manipulate those patterns. Use a cocktail of drugs and electricity to make it imagine impossible things. Speed it up, slow it down, fork the thoughts, try different parameters. I'd already forgotten whatever jargon they used to describe the indent. It sounded clean, scientific. The reality was nothing but. The indent made a hell and filled it with you. And whichever you climbed out, murder by murder, trial by trial, they got to be real again. And they'd remember none of it. They'd keep the instincts, the skills, the intuitions. They'd cruise through life like a shark in the shallows, floating on the shadow of the hell they'd escaped. I'd put this together a subjective month or so ago. Already 2 months into hell. My copy hasn't said anything for a few seconds. It drags on, and I realize with a start that she's crying. "Hey," I say. I find myself, bizarrely, wanting to comfort this woman that I will have to murder. "No, you're right. We're all her. We'll all become part of her when this is over." She shakes her head, water spraying around her with the jerkiness of the motion. "We're gonna be like Amanda, aren't we?" "We already are. Any of us that have survived this far. We're being honed." She's right. I know she is. I was bitter before I walked into this indent, sure, but I wasn't lethal. Not how these last months have taught me. "Yeah," I say, and I want to finish the thought, but I can't bring anything to mind. She stands there in the pond for another minute, getting the tears under control. I try again. I'll take your terms, okay? I win this one, but we can talk. You can swim. She turns around and she's smiling in a mocking kind of way. Okay. Just okay? We aren't much for words. I guess, I say. I crawl out of the wheat, knife still in my hand. I sit down on the bank. I watch her. She hesitates and then strides out of the water. Her feet press into the muddy reeds and she makes her way up to the berm. The blue sky frames her, frames me, and she jumps. For a moment, her wet hair floats around her, weightless. And then she plunges downwards and smacks the water, sending white spray everywhere. A moment later, she comes up, gasping. I make up my mind, commit before I can second-guess myself. I jam the knife down into the mud and begin climbing the berm. The packed dirt is wreathed in roots and studded with stones, and I can feel them press into my soles as I climb. It's higher than I expected. Nothing like the pool, all those years ago, but still a drop of 15 feet or so. The brown rectangle of the irrigation pond frames me perfectly, and I see her down below, swimming with my body, clumsily paddling away from the deep water beneath the berm. She turns around and there's surprise in her eyes. I could say so much. How deep is it? I yell instead. You can just touch bottom, she calls back. It's fun. It's really worth it. Do you remember the... Yeah, I say. The pool. She floats there, and there's nothing more to say. I take a few steps, and I leap. There it is. That moment of weightlessness. And then the arc down, the fall, the touch of feet to surface, the world-encompassing concussion of white water that in an instant becomes a black beneath the muddy waters. I float downwards in the lukewarm dark, and my feet touch the mud. I stick there for a moment, buoyant in the water, lightless and invisible. In the end, it's up to us. One of us gets to be Sam. We get to choose. We can choose through knives and crossbows and hunter and hunted. Or we can choose like this. And I choose.
So yeah, this is a really great story, and thank you again for writing back in. I know you said you took a little bit of a break, and I know it's really hard to get yourself writing when there's so much stuff going on. But thanks again for writing in, and you brought us a story that has some great prose. Like I really love the description, the turns of phrase within it. Really does sort of build up this otherworldly place that this character is set in. And I also really do love the concept of this character sort of battling for control with other copies of their self. And I think it was a really nice choice of sort of leaving the explanation for the end. You know, for us to really just be lost with this character, for us to feel the tension, the fear that this character has towards this woman hunting them. And I think that the explanation at the end sort of really paints the rest of the piece in a different light. It being more so of this character's brain being hooked up to a system that is supposed to apparently teach them things or change them, but no one really knows what happens inside of the brain during this time. So I enjoyed how we were able to see that and also get hints at what the repercussions of this could be. So overall, it's a really solid story. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so many implications for this to be taken. Like, I know this is already a long story, but I could see
Mm-hmm.
like another multiple pages just on like
Yeah.
some of the consequences. Like the main one that we have here that we're exploring a bit is this sort of idea of like pruning the selves. The way that I'm imagining that this works is that the way that I understood it was, so like it creates two copies of the self basically, and then pits them against each other, and then one of them kills the other, and then it takes that one and then splits them into two and does the same thing until you get to a really brutal version or whatever, right?
Or
And so
I
just
guess the true version.
I suppose I don't know if true is um how I
Well, I
would
mean
put
that.
it.
Yeah, and I mean that's a question that I was really thinking of while I was reading this. Because if it is pruning the selves, right? To what end? And like and like
Mm, mm,
exactly what is this pruning process do for the person when they wake up? Like, are they still them, or are they
mm.
a sort of honed down and condensed version of who they are at the core?
Or are they, yeah, or are they like a changed version that wasn't really them in the first
Hmm.
place? Actually, so the whole like they don't remember thing, I actually found that super interesting because you have these copies, right, that both feel like they are the original person, right? And they're trying to stay alive, right? But
Yeah,
by the end, since they all get forgotten, it's kind of like they all die, even the ones that win in the end, right? Because they lose
yeah.
all their memories. And I just found that very interesting. Um, as like a side thing that I was just thinking about after it was over. It wasn't really something that was a focus in the story, but that's totally fine.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, I really like the language in this too. So speaking of though, you mentioned the what is the like criteria and stuff of how they're doing the pruning and stuff. I feel like that is
Hmm.
something I was wondering a little bit that I felt I just wanted just like a little bit more about of like, so at the end here, it's
Hmm.
clear that the um this copy is sort of making a choice about which one's going to live, and I think they're making the choice to basically kill themselves and let the other one win, because that one is clearly like kinder or something, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important thing, and I really like that theme, and just exploring that even more, I feel like would be fantastic. Like the fact that they are choosing to like be vulnerable, but also like, the fact that they are willing to do that sacrifice, it also makes them valuable in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and just all those factors.
But I do want to say real quick that a moment that is sort of similar to what you're saying is when we sort of step outside of the main scene, and then there's a bit about how the main character was sort of talking to someone else who's been indented, and showing how that there was a stark change to that person. Um, and I feel like within that section would have been maybe a like nice moment to sort of do a compare and contrast, showing us how they were
Mm,
versus how they are now.
sure, yeah.
Um, because um, especially when it comes to that person, it made me think that this process was solely negative because they seemed to be a harsher and more terse person afterwards.
Hmm.
I forgot the exact verbiage, but I remember it saying something to where like she changed into a totally different person, and that like the light was taken from her, or something. So that just like begs the the question of like, so people go and get this done for probably good means, but then what is the positive outcome since we've
Mm,
already seen a negative one,
hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering a little bit more about mechanics. And mechanics aren't really like that important, but um like how does this machine choose when is it done, you know? And how are these like copies like different from each other, right? Sometimes I'm wondering, like, I was wondering sometimes of, are they actually, like, different, or are they just, like, the same copy that's just, like, made to just face trauma over and over, basically. But, like, they are essentially the same in each instance. I'm not sure, but...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know either, but this story does raise some really great questions, which I think is a mixture of the effectiveness of this concept and the pros that accompanies it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think that, if you do have more within this world, I would love to see what else this world can really bring, because there are so many different facets that you could really choose to focus on. And yeah, I think that this concept and that this procedure itself has a lot of possibilities when it comes to themes and messages and just the overall purpose of what this story can say.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Speaking of the ending, I really liked just the notion of jumping into the water with their selves and sort of that flashback being a connection. And as one commenter says, I think it's Walker by Faith. I definitely did think that, oh, maybe this is actually a trap, right? And that would be the twist, is that the other version does end up killing them. It ended up not feeling right for that to be the case, and I'm glad that it wasn't. But I did feel that fear a little bit, and I feel that the main character probably did too, right? Of just like choosing to trust, right? And that sort of being a scary thing. And maybe just like a little bit more with that of bringing that out into the light a little bit more of how they are choosing to trust and such. Or maybe that is obvious enough. I don't know. But regardless, I like that theme. And I'm wondering, how do they choose? Like, how do you think that works? Do you think they'd like kill themselves, or do you think they just sort of like concede and that's enough for the simulation thing to end?
Yeah, I mean, I was under the impression that by them conceding and choosing to jump, it was like both of their essences were probably combined. I'm assuming, and then going into the main person, the like unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't get any sense of it being a death, because they did strike a deal. But it could have been like a joint death. I don't know, because did we get a moment of when they woke up?
No.
Okay, so yeah, I feel that something like that could possibly be stated obviously as soon as they do wake up. But I was under the impression that moment was the acceptance of both sides of this character.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like we've talked about, like both versions of them have something valuable, right? Like the one that's swimming is a little bit more forward about trusting and like offering something. But she's also like, a little bit like weaker too, because she's like, I don't even want to fight, right? I just don't want any violence at all. While the other one is like desperate, but also does do that trust in the end. Maybe it does show that like kind of no matter which one wins, in this particular instance, they still do both have like a seed of like goodness and kindness in them both, right? So like, even though this process is ongoing in the main character copy, in this one definitely feels like they are being turned into something more brutal, they still have that seed of goodness in them.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where this story keeps going, if you do choose to work on this one. But either way, thank you very much to Corona Pollentia for sending us your story.
Yeah. I really like the language in here all the way through. Especially those moments that it kind of just like slows down for a second, right?
Uh-huh.
Like yeah, jumping into the water, the weightlessness, I think is a really important one. And in the beginning, you definitely feel that desperation, even through just how they're describing things. It's just so careful. There's a lot of flitting around and checking surroundings and stuff, and you can definitely see that they are very much on edge. But yeah, as the language gets to the end and it slows down, you definitely can tell a difference in the psyche of the main character.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yes.
I wonder how long they've been in the machine, because it says that they've been in subjective 2 months ago in this hell. And I'm wondering, like, how long is each, like, instance of murder, right? Like, I don't think it might not be, like, a whole day, right? Like, they've probably been in this...
It could be in a couple seconds. Even.
Yeah. It feels like this one might be, like, maximum, like, an hour or something, right?
Yeah.
And so does that mean that, like... they've murdered each other, they've murdered themselves however many times, however many hours there are in 60 days. That's a lot. Yeah, and then I wonder how many seconds that is in real life.
Within however long they've been there. I mean, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, based off of my prior knowledge of sci-fi, I could say anywhere from 2 seconds to 2,000 years.
Yeah, basically. And then the last thing that it struck me is something that's more of a focus in the first half of it, as we get into sort of the circumstances of how this main character is kind of doing this out of desperation to fit the workforce, right? They're in this world that treats them as like an underclass, that they are like not worth anything. We open with them like being in the rain with a dollar store raincoat in this garbage, and they're totally still like soaking wet, despite wearing it. And they go into this machine just so that they can like get hired and start like working and stuff, right? And like be able to live a life, right? Except through this process, they kind of like lose like
themselves.
Yeah, and the desire to like be alive, basically, and to be able to enjoy life. And I think that's really, really interesting, just the way that this sort of this world that we live in is so alien, and we're subject to these gigantic forces of corporations that like no one's actually responsible for, and we have to like break ourselves down to be able to fit ourselves as cogs. And yeah, it's fucked up. And I think this is a great way of pointing that out.
Yeah, it's real fucked up, and yeah, I think that this story is, I guess, working to explain that answer. But overall, really, really great job. Well, all right, it's high time rolling into our listener submitted stories section. And the first story we are going to be talking about this week is by Excalibur with an untitled story.
Story, yes. It's a poem. I'll go ahead and read it. So it goes: a knoll's cold crown these climbing kids shall claim. To find some fun and shout with friends, they fly and fall on sheds from height to field, and copied calls this country fill. So the Excalibur talks in a comment that I'll just read that too. It was again supposed to be an English interpretation of the classical elegy, which is a poem composed of elegiac couplets. But they miscounted the number of feet, so they have 5 and 4 instead of 6 and 5. And they shifted from 3-syllable feet to 2 syllables, which made the meter easier and, in their opinion, sounds better. And there's a lot of alliteration in this poem, and this time it's long enough to show the pattern.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I can definitely see that. I'm not terribly versed in poem mathematics, but I think that this story really does sort of bring across a feeling to it, especially within the wordage, how we're To find fun, yeah. How it's this sort of like this sort of like vibrant life on the countryside is kind of what I'm getting. These sort of cold knolls, shouting friends of fun, and copied calls. This country feel. Yeah, it just, at least for myself, it reminds me a lot of my great granny's farm.
Yo, okay, interesting.
Mhm.
Why?
Because this farm is surrounded by these huge hills. It's surrounded by people that are just down the street. Everyone seems to be having fun, shouting, laughing, and loving. Even with this cool breeze throughout the country air. And when I was reading this, I got a lot of that sort of like slowed, easy life from this piece.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely like a nice feeling thing, and I think Excalibur definitely did a good job with the meter. It definitely sounds nice. To find some fun and shout with friends, it's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Feels right.
Well, cool. Is there anything else you want to say on this one before we move on?
No, but I think it's a good exercise in meter and alliteration.
Well, all right. Also, for a quick, I guess, pause, just Stan 8460 asked us a question in the comments. First and foremost, I want to say thank you so much for everyone who is leaving comments and going back and forth. It's really good to see a actual discussion in this comment section. But Just Stan 8460 asked, what type of literature do you enjoy reading the most, and is it the same type which you find yourself writing? So
Yeah.
I will pose that question to you first.
Yeah. Well, there was some really great discussion here. People talking about their own things. I think just generally our community has a lot of focus on fiction and, and sci-fi fantasy. And I definitely fit that too. I definitely read a lot of sci-fi fantasy and stuff. And I think that's what I end up writing the most too. I feel like it's not actually what I'm best at writing at. As I've sort of, like, we've mentioned on a couple of podcasts recently, of like, there are a lot of things I think about and a lot of themes that I think about and stuff. And sometimes when I go to write, instead of focusing on those things that I actually like are emotionally important to me, I just kind of write genre and just sort of write like a aesthetic rather than like the things that are actually meaningful. And I think part of that is just coming from me just like mimicking the things that I read as just like, oh, this is what I write because this is what stories are. And I think that's a mistake I make, actually.
I see. Okay. I'll say I'm in a similar boat. I read a good amount of sci-fi fantasy. That's definitely the genre that I enjoy reading the most because, I mean, not only is it aesthetically pleasing, but I do find that a lot of great concepts and themes come out of that. But what I've actually found myself writing the most is like non-fiction flash pieces. Because I don't know, I find that that's not only quicker to write because it's only about 750 words roughly, but I found that at least for me, I've gotten better at the non-fiction form, better at sort of establishing a world through my own eyes. And I found that I can definitely crank a lot more of those out and feel pretty good and proud of them versus a lot of the sci-fi pieces that I have tried and how they always trend longer. And I find that there are a lot more pitfalls that I find myself stuck in when it comes to writing the longer form fiction.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely harder to handle. There's just a lot more parts to mess up in, basically. The more moving parts you have, the easier it is for something to break, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then also, like, in the same boat, I used to have that same issue of just writing towards the genre and like not really writing about a lot of the themes and like concepts that I care about. That was until I did take this sort of like non-fiction this flash essay class, to where through that I'm able to hop right into these things that I've been really thinking about and like really care about, without having to establish a world, without having to do so much world building. I find that it's quicker, at least for me, to really get at the meat and the heart of why I write, you know?
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, this was a good discussion that I'm glad that Just Dan asked the question.
Definitely. But all right, up next is by Ace of Sword with Spite Take Part 2.
That's right. So in the first part, this is where that couple is in the helicopter ride, and the husband got in a superhero accident and now has a mouthful of mutant teeth. And sort of that adventure goes on as they're trying to turn the mouthful of shark teeth back into a normal mouth, right? And so then they, after taking it to a mad scientist last time, now they take it to a warlock, and the warlock changes it so now the mouth is just full of human teeth, except there's still just way too many of them, and they're not in the right places. And so basically we leave off with it not working, and they're gonna go home. They're gonna have to go somewhere else. Corona Pollentia mentions in the comments something that I totally forgot about the first part, is that they would have gone to the mad dentist the first time, but a broken jaw is not an interesting enough case for the mad dentist, right? So now, with a mouth just full of regenerating human teeth, he might take that case.
Yeah. So yeah, this story I had a really fun time reading. I love how this main issue just keeps getting compounded. And I do love a lot of the slight world building that is sprinkled throughout this fairly fun and more light-hearted story. And yeah, I just love the running gag here of like having to go from one expert to the other. How this person can't help you, but this person will, but they fuck up. So then now you have to take your twice fucked up mouth to a third person. I think it's just a like really nice running gag that really allows us to have fun with these characters, come to understand them a bit deeper, while also still having a solid through line to a story that I would love to see how it ends up. So overall, it's really, really great piece.
That's right. Who is next?
Yep. So the next story is by Just Stan 8460 with Sarah and the Wolves Part 4, The Hidey Hole.
Yeah, so here we have the chicken Sarah. We start with a flashback, sort of getting to know how it was back at the farm. But now there's this rooster approaching her home, and she's hidden herself inside of a hidey hole, I think to avoid being seduced, essentially. But with the wolves about to show up, she wants to shelter the rooster, and she ends up opening the door, and he recognizes her. We have no idea where he's actually come from, but he recognizes her just as the wolves are coming out of the forest.
Yeah. So yeah, this part is a bit slower than the previous parts, but I think that it is well placed within this like wider story. We're leading back up to another encounter, which I really like, and I think that this story does perfectly continue this sort of lighter, fun tone that the previous ones had, while also still slowly building that tension, because there is still danger here. even though Sarah seems to be falling deeper for this wolf. So really, really great job.
Yeah, it's interesting here. We have this rooster, and he's kind of described like, very handsome for a rooster, right? He's young, and he seems like a nice guy, but I think it's clear that Sarah is not having any sort of attraction, at least in the small bit that we get of him.
She wants that wolf.
That's right. Yeah, I'm interested to see how this confrontation turns out.
Well, all right. Our last story for this week is by Walker by Faith with an easy mark.
Yeah, so this is a cool story too. We have this character sneakily listening in on some soccer mom's conversation, and it kind of goes through as he's listening in that he really disdains them, and that he disdains them for just being like wealthy, but actually having like no class essentially. And as he pays attention to the conversation, we kind of like start disliking them too a little bit because they're just like kind of classist and stuff. He sort of reveals to us that he's listening for when these people are going to leave their houses so he can go and steal from them while they're gone, essentially.
Nice.
But on the way out, he is recognized by the people, and so he has to call it off because if they've already recognized him, then it's a little bit riskier than it would be normally.
Yeah. But I really do like how this, how the main character's perception of the world and these people really do paint the story that we are getting. We can tell and really feel how these two soccer moms are pretty vapid, pretty classist, and it's almost as if the main character is looking for any strand of a excuse they can use to really justify them just robbing these people blind, which I really like, and I like how it doesn't seem like this character really has to do too many mental gymnastics to really do that. How they're very willing to just rob these people. So I like really did like that part. And I think that the ending was pretty comical, but also pretty well justified for this story. How even though this person wants to catch a lick, they are smart about it, and that they're not just doing it just to do it. It seems that for them to want to cover their own ass, there has to be a deeper reason, possibly, as to why they are stealing. So, I mean, overall, this is a really great piece by Walker by Faith. If you choose to continue this, that would be great. But if not, this is a solid story so far.
Yeah, I did find it interesting. There's a comment by Corona Pollentia that talks about how they think that the narrator is deceiving themselves because they seem like a very lonely person. And that definitely did get me thinking that, like, yeah, maybe they are just someone that sort of just goes out there and just listens to conversations, and this is sort of their self-justification for why. I mean, something that I did find interesting is that, when I think about it, I don't think it's like that. I think being recognized at a coffee shop is not really that much of a risk, right? For getting caught, right? Especially because like police are actually very incompetent IRL, right?
True, yeah.
like she gets robbed, and then what she gonna tell police? Oh, there's a person at a coffee shop sometimes. Like, yeah, they're not. I don't think they're gonna do anything. I mean, maybe that's just like my perspective, and that's not intentional at all, but it makes me think of like, oh yeah, maybe like the narrator just kind of like any excuse to call it off is good with them because they actually don't want to do it.
True. I mean, I see both of being very valid ways of like looking at this. I see them choosing to call it off by being like seen is somewhat valid, because like if they are at that coffee shop, and if like the cops start asking and saying, well, he's at this coffee shop every week, I can see how this character can be connected to this robbery, especially if they are spotted like at the house. I can see that, but I also think that there is a lot of validity in the idea of this person just liking to listen to people, and that them using this as a excuse is just, so that they don't rob them, but instead they just got to listen to how other people feel. So I don't know, like both pieces are pretty valid, and I think that this story does a great job at sort of keeping it open to where like this main character could possibly be a unreliable narrator in some senses.
Yeah. Regardless, I just do like the way that they're thinking about it the whole way through. Definitely an interesting thing, and you definitely get how much they just like dislike these people. It's just like a little bit mean about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I hate North Face jackets so much.
Me too.
They're just so ugly and so expensive. I don't understand it.
Yeah,
at least, like,
but they last.
I guess like Uggs are like a little bit cute, actually, in my opinion. But North Face is just like, I don't know. I also just like hate that texture too of the jackets. So maybe it's just me.
I get it. It's like that. It's like that faux fluff.
Yeah. But like, I don't know. That's not enough for me to like full on be disgusted with these people, right? So yeah, it's interesting why he looks down on them so much. Yeah.
It is. But thank you very much to Walker by Faith for submitting this story. And we would like to give a big old do the right thing thank you to everyone who did submit a story this week. So, thank you very much to Excalibur.
Thank you so much to Ace of Sword.
Thank you to Corona Pollentia.
Thank you, Just Stand 8460.
And thank you to Walker by Faith. And we would also like to say thank you to everyone who did leave comments. Leaving comments, not only under your own story, but under someone else's, can improve both you and them as writers. So, thank you very much to Just Stand 8460, Ace of Sword, Matt Said Words, Walker by Faith, and Corona Pollentia. Thank you so much for leaving comments.
Yeah, just some wonderful, wonderful discussion this week. If you would like to be like all these wonderful writers and submit your story to Do the Right Thing, the best place to do that would be to go to //Do the Right Thing, set a 30-minute timer, and use 3 of the 4 randomly generated words to be announced at the end of the podcast.
Exactly. And if you want to support us and everything else happening in Doof Media, you can do that by donating to the Doof Media Patreon. All you have to do is donate $10 or more per month to get access to all the exclusive bonus contents that are coming through Doof Media.
That's right. If you haven't caught up with some of the other shows, consider doing so. Over on the Doofcast, they covered season 1 of The Wheel of Time recently, which is sort of a up-and-coming show based off of Terry Pratchett's Wheel of Time series, obviously. And they also covered the new Batman movie, which I heard very good things about. So if you would like to, listen to some discussion about that, I'm sure it's very, very interesting. If you would like to also see the words as soon as they come out, the best way to do that would be follow us on Twitter at RedThingCast. The reason I mention that now is just because we did have an announcement that we are switching to a Monday release schedule permanently, or at least until the end of the spring semester. So normally our episodes come out on Sundays. But we'll be releasing these on Mondays now.
And of course, thank you to not only my podcasting host, but also our community for understanding that change. I know it's definitely more so on my part, being busy, Monday through Monday. But yeah, hopefully as soon as I get on the other end of this semester, we'll be able to, maybe switch to a schedule that is better for all of us. But either way, from now on until further notice, Monday release dates is the way to go.
Thank you for announcing it that way. All right. Is all that we have left just the words to announce?
Yes. So as you know, This month's topic is tradition. So write your story about tradition, whether it is rebelling against tradition, whether it is showing the validity in a certain tradition, or how traditions come about. And the words you'll be using for next week to write your fantastic stories are taxi, unlike, trouser, and quest.
These are fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so a taxi is a sort of transportation where someone will take a vehicle to take one person to another, usually in a smaller area. So you have cars, which are often called taxis, but you also can have like in canals. I'm pretty sure the boats that go along, like gondolas and stuff, are also sometimes called taxis. Also, on the runway of an airport, when a airplane is being taken from one place to another, it gets pulled by a vehicle that is called a taxi. I think that's right, or something. Anyway, whenever the plane is just driving around rather than flying, that's usually called taxiing, I think.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I can't actually. Now I'm confused. I'm not sure if it actually is with the vehicle or not. But yeah, if they're going from the boarding area and they then taxi to the runway for them to take off. Yeah. Okay. The next word is unlike, which is to not like something. Well, interesting, unlike rather than dislike, though.
Yeah. So
wait.
So like unlike would be like a bowl is unlike a fork because yada 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 yada. So I guess it's really focusing on the differences between things.
Right. It's like it's like it's just such a fundamental word, but it is the comparative definition of the word like as in similes and such, rather than like as in your affection towards something. Yes.
Yeah. So there are a lot of different applications for this word. Growing up, I thought that this word was hyphenated, honestly, but
interesting.
Yeah.
So unlike, also you could like someone's post on Facebook and then unlike it.
Unlike it.
Yeah. The next word is trouser, which is another word for pants.
Pantaloons.
Also you could have something in there called a trouser snake. So that's a thing.
That's nice.
That's all I can think of. Anything else?
No. You should put your trousers on two legs at a time.
2 legs at a time out of 4. The next and last word is quest, which is to undertake a task. You can also use it, or a journey. You can also take it as the root of question.
A quest line.
Yeah, that's right. Anything else? I think that's all I got.
I think that's it.
It's a quest. Okay, Jarvis, real quick, what is your teeny tiny, itty meeny, little tiny baby story?
Yeah, so my story follows Winston Churchill, and he is a taxi driver who picked up a $1 billion baby, who gave them the quest of driving them from San Antonio, Texas, to Las Vegas, Nevada. The taxi driver wasn't really too keen on it, but then the $1 million baby pulled $1 million out of their trouser, and he was like, "Damn, that's a whole ass milli. I'll do anything for you." And then over the course of this sort of like buddy comedy road trip movie, they grow to become best friends, even though one is unlike the other.
Wow, that's incredible. Really heartwarming.
Thank you. Thank you. What about you? What is your major motion picture story going to be?
Yeah, well, my teeny tiny story is very literal. It's actually about a world full of mice, right? And so there's this one mouse on a quest, and it has to go somewhere really far away, and it goes on this adventure and it encounters a human that it's actually like from our world, and it's just like in the world of the mice, and there's no other humans, it's just this one, but it's a giant. At first, like, they're scared of each other because they're scared of mice, but then they become friends, and the human puts the mouse in their trousers and then taxis them around, and they're just like a big taxi. And then unlike the mice in our world, the ones in that world are radioactive, and then the human gets cancer from the radiation and dies.
No! Teenage Mutant Ninja Mice!
Yep, that's a good one, Jarvis. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, yeah.
You should
five
do the right thing and give me a bunch of those.
A bunch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Mice?
Yes, that's what I meant. Yes.